Cool. Cholesterol. Okay. Have you guys reviewed this chunk of material yet at all in preparation for the exam? Or is it still back?
A little bit, not a whole lot.
Okay.
I did the practice version of this the other night and did horrible, so yeah, I reviewed, but I'm not great at it. But I know this question's answer.
Based on what the chapter is, I think I do.
Okay, so what does 7-alpha hydroxylase, the rate limiting enzyme, in what?
Is it cholesterol or bile acid? I can't remember.
Pretty sure it's cholesterol.
Yes, it's good. The answer for this one is the bile acid biosynthesis. Can either of you tell me what bile acid is?
Bile is the acid in your stomach that breaks down your food in your stomach.
No, that's the one that's in your gallbladder. It breaks down.
Bile. We do technically call it, like when you spit it or whatever, you say bile, but bile comes from the gallbladder. Yeah. So the bile acid biosynthesis, we're talking about liver, gallbladder. So what happens is, little physiology, the liver kind of makes all of the biles and stuff, and then it sends it down the bile duct, and it goes into and gets stored within the gallbladder, and then the gallbladder can inject it into the intestines in order to like break down and pull apart fats and all that kind of stuff. Okay, so that's bile's job, is to help break all of that down. So whenever you think of bile acid in general, think gallbladder, especially like if you have issues, a lot of issues with like cholesterol, fatty diets, that kind of stuff, kind of stems back to the gallbladder. So like if we ever see high cholesterol, think gallstones. Know what you're gonna think. Okay, and that'll pop up here and there as we go through. And specifically, the 7-alpha hydroxylase is going to be the rate-limiting enzyme when we talk about bile acid biosynthesis. Cholesterol biosynthesis, the rate-limiting step. Do you remember when we were talking last time that HMG, what was it called? HMG reductase, or whatever the full name of it is. That guy was going to be our rate-limiting step for the cholesterol biosynthesis. Fatty acid biosynthesis. What was that?
Oh, I was trying to figure out what happened on my computer.
Oh, okay. Fatty acid biosynthesis. What's our rate-limiting enzyme for the fatty acids biosynthesis, creating fatty acids that we talked about yesterday?
Acetyl-CoA. No.
It is the enzyme that does its main job. Gosh, why does it keep doing this? Open with Microsoft Edge. Thank you. All the way up to the very, very top. One of the first ones that we...
Oh. It's just had it. Acetyl-CoA carboxylase.
Yeah. Our acetyl-CoA carboxylase, whose job is to turn the acetyl-CoA into what again?
Malonyl-CoA?
Into that malonyl-CoA. And then that goes into that whole synthesis process. Okay? Cool beans. A defect in which of the following enzymes would inhibit biosynthesis of primary bile salts?
Well, my guess would be the 7-alpha hydroxylase.
Yeah, it's going to be it again. One sec, let me rearrange my screen a little bit.
Yeah. Grab my book.
Because I want to talk a little bit about bile salts, because this kind of what goes on. So bile salts, when we talk about bile salts, going to use the marker. Bile salts. Jeez. Bile salts are kind of one of the precursors when it comes to creating the bile acid, okay? So the bile salts. So bile salts are made in the liver directly from cholesterol. And kind of this is going to be our precursor, our beginning stage of getting them turning them into bile, turning them into what we actually need to then digest fats. Okay, so we'll talk about that as well. And a real quick, the other part that we'll want to remember is that we have primary, and we have secondary bile salts. Okay, you'll want to remember the two names of the primary ones: cholic acid and I'm pretty sure this is the one he wants you to remember. Deoxycholic acid are the primary bile acids. Okay. These are what we start with. And when these get injected and put into the intestines, what makes our intestines all work properly the way that they're supposed to is that we have a bunch of bacteria, like good bacteria, inside of our gut, right? We call that our natural flora. When our natural gut flora gets in contact with these primary, these are our primary bile acids, it converts them to secondary. So we'll have deoxy, I'm pretty sure these are the two that you want to remember. We'll check in the book again a little bit. Deoxycholic and lithocholic acids. Okay. These are the ones that the gut flora, so the gut flora turns primary into the secondary, and then we can kind of reabsorb and redo and move those things around and do whatever it is that we need to have done with them. Okay. I think there's usually a couple questions about primary versus secondary, so we'll see that later on. Questions about this? Burning questions? Okay. I think this is a repeat question. Would inhibit. Oh, here we go. A slightly different question, but essentially the same exact question. This is a defect in which the following enzymes would lead to inability to produce primary bile salts. Again, it's that 7-alpha hydroxylase. Just different wording for the same type of question. Okay. A diabetic patient has low levels of insulin and high levels of glucagon in his blood circulation. So if we have low insulin and high glucagon, what does that tell us about the state of the blood sugar?
It's low.
Yeah, so blood sugar is low. How would this situation affect the cholesterol biosynthesis in the patient's body system? So cholesterol biosynthesis is going to remain unchanged. It's not affected. It will increase or it will decrease. So essentially, cholesterol is going to decrease. Why would it decrease? Why do we think?
Because your body needs to focus on bringing your blood sugar up.
Yeah, so if we think about it, cholesterol is fat, right? The whole purpose of fats in general are going to be used for energy most of the time. Cholesterol specifically has a whole bunch of extra stuff that we use it for. Let me find there's a nice little, here we go. So cholesterol, right, can be packaged into these things called chylomicrons and be sent off to the rest of the body. There's a better list where cholesterol is all involved. I don't know exactly where it is. That's fine though. Kind of cholesterol, it's a part of its the job of fat is also going to be in cholesterol, especially. Remember, we have our phospholipid bilayers, those lipids. It's going to be used to creating new cells, building stuff up, all that kind of stuff going on. But we're only going to be like making new cells and building stuff up if we are properly balanced, if like things are happening the way that they're supposed to happen. So in this situation where the blood sugar is low, we need to raise the blood sugar. Our body is not going to be focusing on kind of building up. It's not going to be building things based off of fat. It's going to be breaking fat down, breaking down all of those things to raise the blood sugar.
Okay, that makes sense now. And for some reason, I thought it was increased, but that was the opposite question because we had a similar question, I think, last night.
Yeah, so you just look carefully, just pay attention. Like you want to look at like the levels of each of the different hormones. Okay, it's like what's happening there with the blood sugar. If blood sugar is higher, right? Yeah. We're going to be putting our effort into getting things into storage mode, into prepping stuff, into building extra things to store all that extra energy. Whereas if we don't have a lot of available energy, we're not going to keep building stuff around. Rather, we're going to break stuff down.
So what was the secondary bile acid again?
The two that I remember, the deoxycholic acid and lithocholic acid. Cholic acid gets turned into the deoxycholic, and chenodeoxycholic gets turned into lithocholic. I'm pretty sure those are the two that the ones that he wants you to remember. If there are other ones either in the slides or in the book, or if we see others on here, we'll look at those, but I'm pretty sure those are the ones that he'll ask about. Okay. A whatever blank is converted to a blank by loss of triacylglycerols. That word triacylglycerol, what's another AKA for triacylglycerol?
Triglycerides.
Exactly, AKA triglycerides. And what are triglycerides again?
Fatty acids.
Fatty acids.
It's a glycerol backbone with fatty acids on it, so you can almost say it's kind of like a storage or a transport form of fatty acids. It's going to be the way that because remember, if we think about blood, most of blood is water, and fat and water don't mix super well, so we don't want it just floating around in the blood. So we're going to package it really, really nicely into like triglycerides, and then pack that into other things to help it flow nicely throughout the blood. So blank is converted to blank by loss of triacylglycerides.
It's either C or D.
C or D. So very low density lipoprotein. This will be a good chance to talk kind of all about these. I think I briefly mentioned these at one point. We can abbreviate these. Very low density lipoprotein, intermediate density lipoprotein, and then we also have LDLs and HDLs, right? Low density lipoprotein, high density lipoprotein, right? You ever hear the phrase, oh, muscle is heavier than fat?
Yeah.
Like if somebody with a lot of muscle jumps into a pool versus somebody with a lot of fat, even if they weigh the same, the person who's fat floats, where the person whose muscle just sinks.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So when we look at this, the chylomicron is a lipoprotein whose job is to transport fats throughout the blood to the cells or places that need it the most. Okay?
It's the smallest of all the lipoproteins too, correct?
I can't confirm that, but it would make sense because if it's floating throughout the blood, it should be pretty small.
book for it. I just can't remember what it was.
Yeah. So, but the point of all of this, is it's a little bit counterintuitive, where we say very low density lipoproteins means VLDLs are actually going to be some of the bigger ones. So VLDLs have lots of fat attached to them.
And that's why you, like, as far as like cholesterol levels in your blood, they say that the VLDL is, you want to have the lowest amount of it because of the amount of fats attached to it.
Yeah, our VLDL, IDL, and LDL, typically when you do blood tests, you really only look at LDLs and HDL. Those are the main ones that you look at. That's why they say the LDLs, the lower, anything that's low density is bad. And HDLs is good. Because if you have lots of LDL kind of like floating around, that means that you have lots of extra fat that doesn't really have a place to go. Like the body's not using it. Whereas if you have lots of HDLs, that means your body, like the amount of fat that you're consuming, that you have in your body, is the appropriate amount, and your body's using all of it, so it doesn't have a bunch of excess hanging around in the blood. Because excess fats hanging around in the blood is how you start to get issues like atherosclerosis. You start to get plaque buildup in your arteries, that kind of stuff. That has to do with too much fat being around. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah, and I believe actually in the book, maybe we'll pull it up. There's usually a little graph. You can see here kind of the size of stuff, right? We have chylomicron. See how much of each of these things that there is. So you have chylomicrons, lots and lots of stuff. And chylomicrons, I think I misspoke earlier. Chylomicrons are going to be within. I'm pretty sure they're within the liver. Let me double check.
I sent you guys the bile acid, or the primary and the secondary, from the new book.
Okay, sweet.
Okay, yeah. Step back. Chylomicron does do part of the transport, but that's that chylomicron. Its job is to move the lipids from that diet, from that lymphatic system, to the bloodstream to then reach the main tissues, to go and get into the, and then eventually I can get over to the liver and stuff as well. We look at the other size comparison, chylomicrons, VLDLs, IDL, LDL, and HDL. So LDL, HDL. See how there's lots more protein and less of the fat, cholesterol, triglycerides, less of that stuff. So what happens is our body, specifically within our liver, it makes these, once we get all the fat and stuff into the liver, it takes it all apart off of that chylomicron, and it packages it nicely into the VLDLs. And then it'll send it off, do its thing, it goes to wherever it needs to go, goes throughout the body. And then as it continues this kind of the two little parts, it'll go and it'll travel, it'll dump off wherever it needs to dump off. And then also if there's excess in certain places, it'll pick up the excess. So like the VLDL travels around, drops stuff off, whatever. And then if there's excess in that area, if there's an LDL or an HDL, let's say an HDL is floating around in the blood, as it floats around through the blood, let's say there's extra cholesterol or extra triglycerides sitting out, I don't know, in the arm tissue somewhere, it's going to go ahead and grab to those and package themselves into itself and keep packaging and packaging to bring it back and circulate it back around to find wherever it needs to go. Okay, so it's actually kind of counterintuitive. The VLDL, the very low density lipoprotein, is actually the biggest of these lipoproteins. The HDLs are the smallest, and that's because when we talk about size and density are different from each other. So we talk about the density, more fat that's put into these packages means it has a lower density, just like somebody who has more fat than muscle floats rather than sinks.
Hey Drake, that
Does
picture that you had focused from ResearchGate, can you scroll down so I can see the title of it? Nope. You just moved it. It was the one where you had the balls of like.
This one?
I was gonna just
Yeah,
take.
let me just. I can drop the actual picture into the chat window.
Okay.
The picture is now in the chat.
Thank you.
Of course. I think he has a picture somewhere similar to that in all of his stuff.
There's
but
a chart that we went through this in our small group tutoring with him on Monday.
Gotcha. Yeah. So, but going back to the question, so a very low density lipoprotein is converted to an intermediate density lipoprotein by loss of triglycerols. We could also change this out to make it say something like a LDL is converted to an HDL by loss of triglycerols. Or you could change this question again and say an HDL is converted to an LDL by gain of triacylglycerols. See, so there's a couple different ways that you can ask that type of question. So just kind of know the order of them and know that LDLs are the bad kind. VLDL, IDL, LDL are kind of considered bad. HDL considered good. Cool. Best source of cholesterol is which of the following?
Egg yolk.
Yeah, egg yolk. Any kind of animal product. Plants aren't going to have really cholesterol. Animal products do have cholesterol. So that's typically why if somebody has bad cholesterol, they typically put them more on like a plant-based type diet. Or they'll tell you like don't eat egg yolks, that kind of stuff. How many carbon atoms are present in a cholesterol molecule? This is just kind of one of those fun fact tidbits. Not really a way to logic yourself through it. They have 27 carbons. That's just kind of a general fact about cholesterol. How many isoprene or isoprenoid units are required to produce 1 molecule of cholesterol?
What is an isoprene?
I want to say it's 6.
The answer is 6. But I don't know why. I don't know what an isoprene is.
He was on talking about something else the other day with it. He did a good job of confusing me.
He's good at that.
One sec, let me find a good definition. Most of the definitions aren't super nice, but if we look at the actual book, the isoprene is going to be one of something that we create to then put them together in order to make cholesterol.
He was talking about squalene, I think.
Yeah, so you have isoprene. So squalene, which is another precursor to cholesterol. So kind of we build stuff and we create stuff and we put it all together eventually until we get squalene. So it belongs to a group, these called isoprenoids. within kind of the prenol lipid category. So it's just a category, a type of the fats. Squalene gets put together. You have isoprenes, so 6 5-carbon isoprene units. So essentially, it's kind of like this. It's kind of similar when we talk about fatty acid biosynthesis, where we kind of make smaller units and then connect those smaller units together. Think of it like that. We're first going to we start a similar thing. With building cholesterol, we're going to start originally with acetyl-CoA, kind of combine stuff together, mess with stuff, to eventually create isoprenes. And then once we take enough of those isoprenes put together, we take those and we smash those together to get to a squalene. And then from a squalene, we'll do some more stuff to it to get to our final goal of a cholesterol. Okay? So that's kind of the process that we're going to see, that we're going to look at. So I think it's going to be important for us, honestly, just to start here at the biosynthesis and kind of read through some of this to review this, okay? So first step, cholesterol biosynthesis occurs in the cytosol, just like fatty acid biosynthesis. We need hydrolysis of high energy to these things. Thioester bonds of acetyl-CoA. So we're going to need acetyl-CoA, right? And we're going to need ATP. Acetyl-CoA, or acetate, is the source of all 27 carbon atoms of cholesterol. So all of our stuff that we're going to get from acetyl-CoA. Different sources of acetyl-CoA are acetate, the beta oxidation of fatty acids, oxidation of ketogenic amino acids, and the pyruvate dehydrogenase reactions. So the ones that we've learned previously, just where we get acetyl-CoA from. Our reducing equivalent, remember we talked about reducing equivalents last night. They're the same thing as like the reducing agent. The NADPH from malic enzyme or from that pentose phosphate pathway. We have glucose 6-phosphate dehydrogenase and 6-phosphogluconate dehydrogenase of the pentose phosphate pathway, catalyzed biosynthesis of NADPH required for cholesterol biosynthesis. Then this really should kind of be in once, because this is just more this last paragraph bullet point is explaining that reducing equivalent point. So the major stages of cholesterol synthesis are as follows. We condensation of 3 acetyl units and formation of mevalonate. So 2 molecules of acetyl-CoA condense to form acetoacyl-CoA by a thiolase enzyme. So we're going to need 3 acetyl units to form mevalonate. The first step, we take 2 of them, combine them to get acetoacetyl-CoA using a thiolase. Yeah, 2 of them, bam, bam, bam. And then we're going to use our third. So we have here 1, we have 2, actually just test right here. We have 2 acetyl-CoAs. We combine them with a thiolase to give us acetoacetyl-CoA. Then there, right here is our third acetyl-CoA. And we use HMG-CoA synthase to create HMG-CoA, and then we use HMG-CoA reductase, which is our rate limiting step, as well as NADPH to create mevalonate. Is that okay? You know, kind of looks gross, but really we can say acetyl-CoA plus acetyl-CoA gets us to the acetyl-acetyl-CoA. And then we add in another acetyl-CoA. Then we reduce it. Becomes HMG-CoA. And then that turns into mevalonate. Okay. From mevalonate, we're going to have, there's a whole bunch of steps that happen in through here. We'll see if he gives us questions on these or if they're kind of whatever. I don't remember him being super picky on like these specific enzymes because they're not the rate limiting step. We go from mevalonate to 5-phosphomevalonate. Phosphomevalonate means that we added a phosphate group. We need an ATP to add a phosphate group. Next step, we add more phosphate, and then we use even more phosphate. And we're going to continue going down the whole thing until we get down here, the isoprenes, and kind of our original question, those isoprenes right here. We've created now isoprenes that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 carbons. I think that's a question later on, that isoprenes have 5 carbons. We have 5 carbons. So we create and we build, finally we build up our isoprenes. And then we take those isoprenes. You have like the big, long, yucky names of them. I would just recognize isopentenyl and dimethylallyl. Blah, 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 blah. Gross. I hate saying the names of stuff, but it helps you remember it. So I would just recognize those. And you're going to take either of those, right? And you're going to keep breaking them down, adding stuff. So right here, see how we mess with it a little bit, and then we add more. That isopentyl, we're going to add another one, so we put it together, and then we add more, and then we add more, and eventually we get a squalene. And then the squalene gets messed with to get us all into these kinds of junk to get us to cholesterol. So remember, the squalene has 30 carbons, and then in this process, as we break stuff down and do stuff, whatever, we're gonna bring it down to 27 carbons, which is our fully formed cholesterol. So with the test being so close, I would just recognize, I would stick to kind of these questions, whatever information these questions specifically say, and then just kind of general keywords of like, know what a squalene is, and hey, how do we make squalene? Squalene synthase. Just kind of the general stuff that we can remember fairly easily to get us through this test. And then we end up with the using the squalenes to get to cholesterol. Sound fair?
Yep.
So how many isoprene or isoprenoid units are required to produce 1 molecule of cholesterol? We have 6. Hypercholesterolemia can be caused by which of the following? This word again, we saw one of these last night. Hyperemia. What does that mean?
So like that one's going to be high cholesterol levels in the blood.
Exactly. So we have too much cholesterol in the blood, because hyper means too much, emia means in the blood, cholesterol is cholesterol. So what can cause that? Increased activity of the lipoprotein lipase, increased levels of HDL. Let's actually go through each of these. So increased activity of the lipoprotein lipase. So lipase, what does a lipase do? What does a lipase enzyme do?
breaks down fats.
So if we're breaking down fats, at any point would we be building cholesterol and creating cholesterol if we're breaking down fats?
Nope.
Probably not. Increased levels of HDL, that's our good cholesterol, is what we call it, or a good blend fat. So again, that means we don't have excess levels of cholesterol, so we won't be have hypercholesterolemia. Decreased levels of free fatty acids and glycerols, the same thing. If we have less fat, we're not going to be building cholesterol. Increased LDL receptor concentration. Increased LDL receptor concentration. So if we have this, we'll see. This one I'm pretty sure this is the reason, just based off of what I can remember in other classes. When we have the right amount of LDLs and stuff in our blood, our body's going to become more sensitive to that receptor, to the LDL. The receptors become more sensitive because there's less of them. It needs to be able to grab onto them when they're available. Do you remember when we talked about how with type 2 diabetes, the insulin receptors get desensitized?
Yeah.
Right? And so you actually get less insulin receptors. This is kind of the opposite of that. If we have less LDLs, we're going to increase the number of LDL receptors for a better likelihood of grabbing the LDLs that we do have. So this means that there are few LDLs floating around. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. Finally, defective level of functional LDL receptors. And this question, that's going to be our answer, because if we have our LDL receptors are dysfunctional, we can't tell how much that there is if they're not working properly. So the body's going to think that we don't have enough cholesterol. So it's going to cue the body like, hey, we need more cholesterol. We need fats and stuff coming along to do what we need to do. And it's going to cause hypercholesterolemia. Cool beans?
Cool.
Identify the compound which is derived from cholesterol. We have quinocholic acid, choline, VLDLs, and mevalonate. Thinking back really quickly, mevalonate is what we actually form at the beginning to make cholesterol. So now we're thinking mevalonate is way back here. We do all that other stuff to the isoprenes and then squalene to get to cholesterol. So we're looking after cholesterol, then where does it go? So it's not mevalonate. VLDLs, right? VLDLs are the very low density lipoproteins, so they're holding a bunch of triacylglycerols. So it's not actually derived from cholesterol. We have quinocholic acid, and we have choline. If I'm not mistaken, we'll double check. You said that you sent us the. Okay, so did you say that you had what the new book said? What were the bile salts that they wanted us to remember? You're muted. Can't hear you.
I sent it to text. So in the group chat
Okay,
that we have.
Okay. Yeah.
It was cholic and chenocolic, deoxy and deoxychenocolic.
Yeah. Okay, so choline. So in that, it says that those are the ones that I said. Cholic acid, quinocholic acid, and what did I write? That bile salts. Quinocholic acid and quinodeoxycholic acid are the same thing, just AKAs of each other. Okay, so if he says quinocholic, it's the same thing as the quinodeoxycholic acid. Okay, just with science, they have to make it confusing and do AKAs because otherwise it wouldn't be as fun, right?
Oh yeah.
Choline itself, choline is an amino acid,
Yep.
right? Yes, it is one of our essential nutrients. And quinocholic acid is one of our bile salts. Specifically, it is one of our primary bile salts. So from cholesterol, we make our biles. Woohoo! Acceptable answers for this would also be cholic acid, or technically any of the secondary bile salts, the deoxycholic or the quinocholic acids, because those are technically derived from cholesterol. If you have to choose, quinocholic or cholic acid are your first choice. Either of those are your first choice. If neither of those are an option, then you look at the secondary bile acids. Okay? A typical clinical situation, a diabetic patient has high blood levels of insulin and low blood levels of glucagon. Immediately, what are we thinking about this? If they have high insulin and low glucagon, blood looking like?
It's the opposite.
What's their blood sugar?
Or their blood sugar is going to be higher, correct?
Yeah.
Blood sugar is high because insulin is high. So we're trying to lower it down. How would this situation affect the cholesterol biosynthesis? So if blood sugar is high, we have a whole bunch of extra stuff in the blood. What happens to our fat biosynthesis?
It's going to increase.
Exactly.
This is the answer I thought was increased earlier, and it was this one.
Yeah. Just pay attention. He'll probably give you one, or if not both of these on the test, because he wants you to recognize the difference between the insulin and the glucagon levels that we learned last trimester.
Do me a favor, underline high levels of insulin and low blood levels on this one for me so I can remember it when I review.
High blood levels of insulin, low blood levels of glucagon.
Thank you.
Pay attention to that. Place the following intermediates in cholesterol biosynthesis in the correct order, starting from the beginning. Gross. So,
Ugh, yuck.
It's going to be D. Because squalene's right before cholesterol.
I actually don't like any of these. Let me No, actually, yeah. No. I do, yeah. Never mind. I was mistaken. So remember, we started off at the very beginning of a list. So squalene, yes. We know that squalene comes before cholesterol. There is a little bit of additional steps before we go from squalene directly to cholesterol. So we'll throw that in here. But so if we follow the whole process, right? At the very, very beginning, we combine 3 acetyl-CoAs, right?
Yes.
We have our first acetyl-CoA plus our second acetyl-CoA gives us that acetyl-CoA or whatever. And then adding the third one gives us HMG-CoA. So first pick, our first thing should be HMG-CoA. So that removes D. If we look at the other answer choices, immediately squalene. Squalene should be way later on down the row, so it won't be that one. Isoprene, mevalonate. We go from HMG-CoA to mevalonate first. So it's not going to be this one. So this actually gives us a really, really pretty picture of exactly which ones we want to know. So from HMG-CoA, we add another acetyl-CoA to give us mevalonate. From mevalonate, we can kind of skip these steps. We get our isoprenes. So mevalonate to the isoprenes. And these are the kind of gross ones that honestly, personally, I just kind of skip over a little bit. But here's what we're talking about. The farnesyl pyrophosphate to get to squalene. From squalene in animals, we first go to lanosterol and then to cholesterol. So, way to remember this if this specific question pops up. Start very, very beginning would actually be acetyl-CoA, right? At the very, very beginning.
Mm-hmm.
And then the acetoacetyl-CoA. And then HMG-CoA is going to be like our first big one. And then cholesterol should be our end point. Lanosterol is right before that. Squalene is right before lanosterol.
The abbreviations I just came up with for this are ridiculous. Because I was writing it down fast just so I can look at the list of how it breaks. Mm-hmm. I just got to remember what all of them stand for when I'm going through it.
Yeah. I would use this exact question. Like, I would just like copy paste this little chunk right here as part of like pre-test review of like, okay, this one right here, I'm going to look at right before the test, just to remind myself kind of the order of things.
I just screenshot it.
Yeah. Okay. Statins are another storage from cholesterol synthesized in the human liver during fatty acid biosynthesis, are static ions in physiological fluids, are competitive inhibitors during cholesterol biosynthesis. So statins are a type of drug, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're typically given to patients who have high cholesterol. And that's because they are competitive inhibitors during cholesterol biosynthesis. So they're going to go in and mess with the cholesterol biosynthesis to prevent cholesterol from being made to help reduce levels of cholesterol. Is that okay?
That makes sense, actually, because I've been around that forever.
Yeah. The immediate non-cyclic, so when you see the word cyclic, we think of cycle, so something's going around and around and around, right? The non-cyclic 30-carbon precursor for the synthesis of cholesterol is which of the following? If we see 30 carbons, what are we thinking?
Squalene.
Or squalene. If we think 5 carbons, what are we thinking?
Isopentanol.
Yeah, or isoprenes or isoprenoids. What could be a probable effect of abnormally lower blood levels of insulin and high blood levels of glucagon on cholesterol biosynthesis in a diabetic patient? So we look, low insulin, high glucagon. What's this patient dealing with?
cholesterol biosynthesis is going to decrease.
High blood sugar. Yeah, so we got low blood sugar. With low blood sugar, we decrease fats being made. So we should, decrease.
I get it, and I understand why now because we've had 3 of these questions. But wouldn't it just makes better sense to say high blood glucose? Because for those of us who worked in the diabetic world, it makes sense that way.
Yeah, but they want you to remember the reason why he does it this way is because next trimester in physiology 2, you spend a ton of time messing with insulin. Insulin glucagon stuff does not go away.
I know.
Like, you're gonna see a lot of it. And they want you to understand, especially in chiro school, they want you to understand it super well because diabetes is so common within just the populations that we're going to be working with. People who tend to be diabetic also tend to be, a little bit overweight, less active, more chronic inflammation, tend to have aches and pains. And like, it's important to understand these things later on to differentiate between, your myelopathy, radiculopathy, which is nervous system, skeletal system related, and neuropathy, which is the which is like the often diabetes kind of related. So this sets you up with that focus. Okay, so what is the approximate amount of cholesterol biosynthesized by the liver per day? The answer is 1,000. That's another kind of just little trivia. Hey, remember this kind of thing from the book. What is the effect of conjugation of bile salts with glycine? When we talk about bile salts, we'll have conjugated versus non-conjugated bile salts. Okay. Let me show this to you guys. So, to be conjugated, bile salts get conjugated in the liver to increase their water solubility. Conjugated bile salts have a hydrophobic and hydrophilic side that hence their function as surfactants. Do you remember what a surfactant is? I don't know if you guys have ever talked about surfactant.
The word sounds familiar, but...
So it means a active agent. Most commonly, you talk about surfactants in the lung. My Wi-Fi is pooping out. Come on. It's okay. They're chemical compounds that decrease the surface tension or interfacial tension between two liquids, liquid and a gas, or liquid and a solid. So the surfactant's job, like when you have a surfactant, especially in the gut, remember these bile agents are going to be being put into the intestines in order to help digest things and keep things moving along the way that they're supposed to. So the effect of conjugation, which happens within the liver using glycine, is it's going to decrease the pKa value of the bile salts and make them more soluble and better detergents. When we talk about a detergent is what breaks things down. Remember, just like when you like dish soap is a detergent. I don't know if you've ever done this. If you see you have like a greasy pan and you put a little drop of soap in the grease that's floating on the surface and it just rushes away.
Mm-hmm.
It's the job of a detergent. So the bile salts get conjugated within the liver in order to do all of that kind of stuff, in order to allow it to break down the fats and keep things going. This is also, you think about the bile salts, remember they're being stored and helped with, like within the gallbladder and stuff. If we have gallbladder issues, or if you get your gallbladder taken out, I don't know, do either of you know anybody who's had their gallbladder removed?
My dad.
If he ever eats, I don't know if you've ever had this unpleasant experience, if he ever eats like a really fatty meal, does he ever, I don't know, have you seen him do that at all? Like a big
Once.
double
One time.
cheeseburger or something?
Yeah.
And immediately he sprints to the bathroom,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
And that's because if you don't have your gallbladder to produce and like to put in the correct bile salts, the fats don't get broken up and prevented, and like the fats coat the intestines and everything just slides on through. So
Talking about having no gallbladder, why would green peppers be a problem?
Green peppers?
They're hard to put down and they're not completely ripe, so they mess with your gut. Whether you're got your gallbladder or not.
I'm like, that's just something he's always said. He's like, since I got my gallbladder out, I can't eat green peppers. And I'm like, what? That's weird.
I mean, it could also just be like food sensitivity that he has, but like, yeah.
Yeah, he claims it's since he had his gallbladder out. I'm like, weird. Okay.
It could have, when you remove your gallbladder, it changes the whole gut biome. And so like the flora and stuff that he used to have might have shifted and might change. So might not be able to process it like he used to be able to.
That makes sense.
This whole idea of conjugated versus non-conjugated, we'll pay attention to that. That's going to come back up again further on down the road when you look at like pathologies, because that's going to tell you, maybe we'll see a couple questions on it, but that's going to tell you where the issue is, whether it's a liver issue or if it's like a gallbladder issue. So for example, if because you'll see like these salts and stuff within the urine and with other parts. So for example, it'll go into the blood and then get filtered out. For example, so if we have conjugated bile salts, so conjugated bile salts in the urine, that means the liver is working fine. If it's non-conjugated, liver issues. So if we have conjugate, that means more than likely it's probably something other than the liver is the issue. So not super important right now, but it'll come back later on. What is the effective conjugation of bile salts with taurine? This is
Almost the same question, just a different.
Yeah, just a different dude. My guess is this is to let you know that glycine and taurine are what's going to be conjugating the bile salts. So it decreases pKa, makes them more soluble and better detergent. So if it asks what is used to conjugate bile salts, glycine and taurine. What is the effect of statins on cholesterol biosynthetic pathways? We talk about statins. What do statins do to cholesterol biosynthesis?
They
decrease it because they're trying to fight hypercholesterolemia. And what was our rate limiting step in the formation of cholesterol? What was our rate limiting enzyme?
HMG-CoA reductase.
Yeah, so right here, those statins are going to focus on the rate limiting step and prevent that. Huh?
I almost guarantee you he asked that damn question. I almost guarantee you he's going to ask that question.
Oh, yeah. something along that lines. Which compound increases the Vmax of the enzyme acetyl-CoA carboxylase? Acetyl-CoA carboxylase, what does that do?
It initiates the whole process to turn acetyl-CoA into malonyl-CoA.
And that's with the fatty acid. So if we look at this, whenever we, which of the following, if we have excess of, is going to increase activity of acetyl-CoA carboxylase?
Citrate?
Yeah, citrate. Because of that citrate, how it crosses over, and that's what we start with in order to go from the inside of the mitochondria to the outside into the cytosol for fatty acid biosynthesis. Good. Which compound undergoes cyclization process in order to form cholesterol molecule in the cholesterol biosynthesis pathway?
Squalene or linosterol?
It's going to be our squalene. But remember that squalene gets turned into linosterol, and linosterol goes to cholesterol. This dimethyl pyrophosphate, what is this an example of? What is this guy?
It's one of the iso things.
Yeah, one of our isoprenes. Good. How many carbons does an isoprene have?
5.
Yeah, so how many isoprenes do we need to make up a squalene?
6.
It at 5 p.m.
And then our final product, cholesterol, has how many carbons?
27.
Nice. Which condition activates release of sterol regulatory element binding protein? Jesus, big words. SREBP from the SRBP cleavage activating protein and enhances cholesterol biosynthesis.
Ooh.
Basically, this question is asking, all this is extra fluff. So it's when does cholesterol biosynthesis take place? Under what conditions?
When we have low cholesterol.
Yeah, when we have low levels of cholesterol. See how much fluff he likes to add?
He likes way too much fluff.
Yeah, he does. He does not add as much fluff as Dr. Tate, though.
Yeah.
Oh God, don't get me started with Tate.
Which
I'm so annoyed with the man right now. I want to review my exam this week before I get overloaded with exams again next week. He hasn't responded to my email yet. I sent him, I'm like, I'm available anytime except for
message him on Teams.
Yeah,
Right.
and all of us who took it on campus have been meeting with him all day today.
All right, so that
Yeah.
makes sense.
He responds.
emailed him
He
last
responds specifically better on Teams.
Oh, good to know. Thank you, guys.
Which of the following is an example of a secondary bile salt?
Deoxycholate.
Yeah.
Yeah. So our deoxycholine, deoxycholate, those are going to be our secondary bile salts.
Not chocolate, deoxycholate.
Which of the
Didn't
following
say
amino acids can be used to synthesize a conjugate bile salt? Oh, here's a question that we talked about earlier. So conjugating.
The
So
glycine.
glycine.
Yeah, glycine. What was the other one?
Taurine?
Taurine, yeah. Taurine, however you want to pronounce it. Which of the following can be derived from a sterol? Sterol is a fancy way of saying cholesterol.
So cholic acid?
Yes. Sterol. There's a sterol right there. Yeah, so our cholic acid.
Why when we walk through these like this, I have no problem with them, but when I get a test in front of me, I freaking freeze.
Because it's more stressful in a testing environment.
I just
The
know
brain
all of my
tends to-
classmates on campus are like, you're actually learning biochem? Good for you. And I'm like,
you'll be grateful when it comes time for part 1 when a huge chunk of them fail and you just have to review it and be like, okay, cool.
Yeah.
Which of the following can cause hypercholesterolemia? I think we already had this question, or one very similar to it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's going to be the defective LDL. Again, similar thing. Enhanced cholesterol biosynthesis is another repeat. Should be our low levels of cholesterol. Which of the following conditions can deactivate the rate-regulating enzyme of cholesterol biosynthesis? What's the name of the rate-regulating enzyme of cholesterol biosynthesis again?
HMG-CoA reductase?
Yeah, reductase. So which of the following can inactivate?
Oh, it has to be phosphorylated in order to work, correct? Or isn't that a different one I'm thinking of?
I would say it would have to be dephosphorylated to be activated. So it would be phosphorylation, right?
Good. See, you guys did learn this yesterday. It's working, guys.
It's working!
It works.
Okay, I'm sorry, but yeah, I actually just had a conversation with Thomas Blake today, and that was kind of awkward, but it was okay.
Very good. Okay, now decreases cholesterol biosynthesis.
That would be high
And we
levels.
can ignore all this extra fluff. If we have high levels of cholesterol, we decrease cholesterol biosynthesis. I really hope you see these exact questions and you're just like, oh, skip, decrease, this is the answer.
Seriously.
Which of the following does not contribute to lowering the risk of atherosclerosis? This is kind of a weird question. The answer is foam cells. Because remember, statin drugs decrease cholesterol. HDLs, if we increase HDLs, then that means we have less cholesterol. Reverse cholesterol transport. I don't think he ever talked about this, but that is essentially like when your body needs, when like you start to have plaque and fat buildup and stuff in the bloodstream, and then you change how you eat, and then your body needs more cholesterol, so it starts to clean some of that up. If I remember, foam cells. So foam cells are involved in the formation of primary atherosclerotic plaques. Their continued growth and ultimately their rupture, which finally leads to either MI or stroke. So the foam cells, remember correctly, the foam cells are actually macrophages. So macrophages, their job is to find stuff, like find the stuff that's not supposed to be in your cells, and they eat it. So the macrophages eat the cholesterol, the excess cholesterol and stuff, and then they turn into foam cells and kind of become part of the problem within the lining of the arteries when we talk about atherosclerosis. So not something you need to know super deep right now. Just if you see that question, now you know kind of what it's talking about. Which of the following enzymes is responsible for the phosphorylation of HMG-CoA reductase?
I feel like we talked a little bit about this yesterday, didn't we?
Briefly, yeah. So if we look at we see the word phosphorylation. Immediately, phosphorylation is adding a phosphate. What type of enzyme adds a phosphate?
Kinase.
Kinases. So it can't be this, can't be that. So it's between one of these two. And
We haven't talked about cyclic GMP with this one, which means it's got to be the AMP dependent.
And that's correct.
I was right. I just picked the wrong one.
Right? But if anything, just knowing that kinases do phosphorylation That gives us a 50-50 shot.
Okay.
In answering the question.
And that is why I focused so hard on those last try.
And you will be rewarded in time.
I was telling some of the try ones that I was talking to do that too. I was like, you've got to make a list. Every time a new one comes up, just put it on your list.
It's kind of funny because I'm in the new Try One group chat and stuff, and every now and then
Are they panicking yet?
I'll see. What was that?
Some of them
Are
are.
they panicking yet?
Oh yeah. Every now and then, I'll see freaking out about biochem or something, and then somebody will pop in "Yo, watch Drake's YouTube videos." I'm like,
I've done it with some of the try twos, or some of the try ones who've messaged me. I'm like, Drake's videos.
That's what I tell all of them. Go watch Drake.
I spent hours and hours and hours making all this. If you just watch those videos and watch through the LINUS learning questions and stuff, you'd pass the class.
That's what I did last try. I don't think I watched a single one of Sarkar's lectures.
Well, here's the thing. We have to watch his lectures on perusal in order to get credit for them. So guess what? I have to watch his lecture, but what I do is I hit play, mute it, and walk away. And then I go back and watch Drake or somebody else.
Nice.
Ooh, gee, I know this one.
Okay. Which of the following enzymes is the rate regulatory enzyme for bile acid biosynthesis?
The 7-alpha hydroxylase.
Hydroxylase.
Yeah. Good.
We do remember stuff. Liz?
HMG-CoA synthase. What does that do?
It synthesizes the it's not the acetyl-CoA. Maybe it is.
Or acyl?
Acetyl-CoA.
Acryl, aceryl.
You're both halfway there. It's the acetyl-acyl-CoA. It takes the two. We have the two acetyl-CoAs, right? And we have a thiolase that binds those to give us acetyl-acyl-CoA. And then the acetyl-acyl-CoA gets another acetyl-CoA added onto it. And then HMG-CoA synthase is what combines it to create HMG-CoA. And then HMG-CoA continues on to get converted into the mevalonate. Which of the following functional groups is transferred during the esterification of the cholesterol? It's an acyl group. I don't remember talking about that at all when we were looking at the book and stuff, so. Which of the following is an example of a secondary bile salt?
Deoxycholic.
Yeah, or 2 deoxys. Which of those is a primary bile salt?
Phenolcholic.
Good. What's the other primary bile salt?
Cholic.
Yeah, just cholic.
Which of the following is not an intermediate in the synthesis of cholesterol from acetyl-CoA? So let's go through each of these. Squalene for sure is. Mevalonate sure is. Isopentenyl pyrophosphate. That's one of our, what are they called again?
Isoprene.
Nice. So last one, malonyl-CoA. What's malonyl-CoA from?
Malonyl-CoA is what is formed from acetyl-CoA in fatty acid biosynthesis.
Nice. Which of the following are the storage forms of cholesterol? Don't think we talked about this. Deoxycholic acid, that's a secondary primary salt. Quinocholic is a primary bile salt. Bile acids, so literally these are both bile acids. So in order for any of these to be correct, it'd have to be in all of the above. So cholesterol esters are our storage form. Knowledge is power. Which of the following molecules undergoes a condensation reaction with acetyl-CoA during the first step of cholesterol biosynthesis?
2 acetyl-CoAs, right?
Yeah. What type of enzyme does that condensation reaction?
Synthase.
Yeah, synthase.
Reductase. Synthase or reductase?
The very first step is going to be a thiolase. Right. So look here, acetyl-CoA, combining 2 of them is a thiolase. And then we have a synthase, then a reductase. Which of the following 2 compounds condense to form HMG-CoA in cholesterol biosynthesis?
Acetyl-CoA and mevalonate. Right? 2 acetyl-CoAs.
Let's walk through the process, right? We have an acetyl-CoA plus an acetyl-CoA combined to form what?
The acetoacetyl-CoA.
Yep, the acetoacetyl-CoA. And then what do we do?
And then you have the HMG-CoA synthase adds.
Is it the mevalonate? I think we do, or the acetylene?
Mevalonate, right? No?
What does it add into it in order to turn into, so this?
Another acetyl-CoA, right? Because it ends up being 3.
Yep.
Yeah, it ends in another acetyl-CoA to get us to HMG-CoA. So condensed to form HMG-CoA is this guy and this guy. So it's an acetyl-CoA and an acetoacetyl-CoA. Does that make sense why that's the answer?
Yep.
And that's all the cholesterol.
Can you send me that, Drake, please, or is it just going to be in there?
Scale of 1 to 10, how much better would you feel about cholesterol than when we started?
9.5.
9 out of 10 better than I was at probably a -2. So I'm up there now.
Yeah.
I'll just go ahead and drop this in the chat.
Saved as...
My group chat for my small study group of how we break down stuff during the week just to go through things. They're like, what classes is everybody doing before we all review together?